afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's time for us to make a start. And welcome to this year's Wolfson Memorial Lecture at the University of Cape Town. I'm Professor Sue Harrison. I'm Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Internationalization. I'm very pleased to host this key event in the university's calendar on behalf of our Vice Chancellor, Professor Mark. The Wolfson Memorial Lecture highlights key global research in areas of public interest and social impact. And UCT is really proud to honour our strong partnership with the Wolfson Foundation and our shared commitment to the pursuit of excellence in education and research. We continue to, as a university, to lead the African universities in 5 major university research rankings, or the 5 major world university rankings, something we're very proud of, and currently note that we rank in the top 200 internationally. We compete in these rankings with institutions which are considerably more well-resourced than UCT is, and also in our researchers are focusing often on critical needs of the global south and the people living there. Priorities which are not usually recognized in the global rankings, which makes us very proud of where we're at. And it's relationships such as our relationship with the Wolfson Foundation, which help to keep the university positioned through being able to do more than we would without such support. So thank you to the Wolfson Foundation. Today we're going to focus on a growing health concern in Africa, which is Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. Worldwide, dementia is the 5th leading cause of death and 2nd leading contributor to death from neurological diseases. The World Health Organization estimates that by 2050, 150 million people will be living with dementia. This is an increase of 204% from 2017, and health practitioners expect that most of the increase will occur in low to middle income countries, including within Africa. There are already more people with dementia in low to middle income countries than there are in high income countries, and this is set to increase. So by 2050, it's expected that 90 million of the 131 million people expected to have dementia globally will be living in low to middle income countries. Everywhere, dementia is a major cause of disability among older people that can have a huge impact on quality of life. Even more so where well-done health and care systems do not exist. So in simple terms, Alzheimer's has been connected with a specific protein that is linked to the risk of disease in Caucasian people. But research has shown that this link is not so consistent in people of African and Hispanic origin, work done in the USA. This suggests that there are other genetic and risk factors also involved, and it's an area that needs to be studied further, especially on this continent. UCT researchers have risen to the challenge and have a number of projects focusing on dementia in African communities. A few examples are the research led by Professor Mark, which has addressed how doctors can improve the diagnosis of dementia, especially in the context of relatively resource-poor, low and middle-income countries like South Africa. The prevalence of dementia in South Africa and the HIV-associated dementia and HIV-related stroke, among other issues. UCT has also partnered with the Care Policy and Evaluation Centre of the London School of Economics and the University of Sussex, along with Alzheimer's Disease International and Dementia Alliance International, to develop a range of work packages that help to address Alzheimer's and dementia, including public awareness, treatment, capacity building for local researchers and healthcare professionals within the context of 7 countries, including South Africa. Associate Professor Mark Snyder is leading this work at UCT. And recently, the Associate Professor Sam Nightingale of UCT's HIV Mental Health Institute gained funding to assess a cohort of older people with HIV, aiming to explore mechanisms of Alzheimer's disease related to chronic inflammation. And this will be a collaborative project between South Africa and the UK. So tonight's guest lecture is a global authority on dementia. Next up is Professor of Clinical Neurology at University College London Institute for Neurology. He is Director of the Dementia Research Centre, Joint Head of the Department of Neurodegeneration. the founder member of UK Dementia Research Institute. He's a consultant neurologist at the National Hospital of Neurology and Neuroscience in the UK, where he runs a specialist cognitive clinic. He helped set up the first support groups for two devastating disorders, young onset dementia and familial dementia, both are special research interests of Professor Fox. His research has focused on improving diagnosis of dementia and using imaging and biomarkers to assess novel therapies. He established the Leonard Wolfson Experimental Neurology Centre at University College London to accelerate research, such effective treatment, and to train the next generation of research leaders. He is listed as one of Paraguay's most highly cited researchers globally and has received a number of awards, including the 2017 Western Brain Institute International Outstanding Achievement Award, the Royal College of Physicians of Edinburgh, Alexander Morrison Medal in 2018, the Raspberry Free European in 2022. Professor Fox, I welcome you to the podium.
So, well, Sue, thank you so much for a very kind introduction. It always just increases the pressure, doesn't it? Someone does a nice introduction like that. I am really very honored to be giving this, the Wolfson Memorial Lecture of 2022. And here at UCT, it's been a great pleasure to be here, and I've already shown great hospitality and generosity by a number of faculty, and that's a great privilege. So what I'll be speaking about is, as Sue said, I'll be talking about the challenge, but also the opportunities to prevent dementia. In the interest of transparency, start with my disclosures. I provide advice and advisory boards to a number of clinical trials that I think are crucial to us finding cures for these diseases. And all those payments are to UCL rather than University College London, rather than University. But I'd like to record again my thanks to University College, University Cape Town, the organisers, Mel Werner, thank you so much for all my logistic questions and getting me here safely, despite incredible crime. I'd like to thank the Wolfson Foundation, the Wolfson family, and the trustees, and I particularly like to thank the generosity the Wolfson Foundation have extended to so many our researchers. I have to thank my funders, that's without which what can happen, and my colleagues at the Dementia Research Centre. This really is a team effort, and I'm very fortunate to work with some fantastic colleagues. But any errors you notice in the talk, they're my responsibility, not my colleagues. So I'll pass off to them. But the people I'd like to dedicate this lecture to are the families and patients who incredibly selflessly contribute to research. A word about Lord Leonard Wolfson, and really I should take this from Paul Rasmussen, who is the wonderful chief executive of the foundation, who just recently published a biography of Lord Wolfson. And I'll read it because it really speaks to what Wolfson have done for so many institutions. That the legacy lives on in the many thousands of buildings constructed and the lives touched by a family. Above all, continuing the charity we have to create, which he dedicated so much energy. And I've already seen phenomenal talent and energy here at UCT. And of course, people are what make universities great. They absolutely need the tools, the buildings, the facilities increasingly to make research and teaching actually successful. So my focus tonight will be on the challenging factor causes of dementia. I'll talk about what I mean by prevention of different things for different people. The risk factors, modifiable and not modifiable, how we might intervene with therapies. I'll talk about risk studies and biomarkers that I believe open up a real opportunity we've never had before. And I'll talk finally about the prospects for prevention. So I thought I'd start with this lovely quote from Benjamin Franklin when he was advising the people of Philadelphia that preventing fires was rather easier than putting them out. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think that applies to most things in medicine. So, a word about what dementia is and is not. It's not just aging. It's not just evolved memory loss. This is the interactive bit. Has anybody ever had great trouble remembering somebody's name or the equivalent of their name? Relax, we all have it, okay? It's dementia, our goal to explain, is much more than, I'm afraid, the natural process of our cognitive processes. Some slow down, some with difficulty in recalling things, but hopefully mitigated by wisdom of years as well. So it's not a single disease, it's a non-specific syndrome of many causes, and no one is immune, whether you hold high office, Catherine Reagan, or Muhammad Ali. We have the Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, and dementia due to chronic brain trauma. Very different diseases that ending up with devastating effects on people's cognitive function. And dementia is at its heart, disconnection on so many levels. At a cellular level, it's a loss of connection between the billions of neurons. Everyone in this room has 80 to 100 billion neurons. That's more, 10 times more than the total people on the planet. And each of those neurons has thousands of connections. And they are the essence of what makes us a thinking human being. Remarkable complexity, but also remarkable sensitivity to damage and degeneration. And the loss of those connections between brain cells leads to this cognitive decline, and it leads to dementia. The dementia has a whole lot of different other connections that are lost at different levels. We lose connections with our past, our memories. They're what make us what we are. We lose connections with our skills, our arithmetic, spelling, reading. And we lose connections with the outside world. Dementia is a dreadfully isolating condition. People lose employment abilities or lose ability to interact. Ultimately, the worst loss of connection of all is loss of the connection to the people we love most. And that's what happens in dementia. So it's a challenge, and it's one worthy of a lot of effort. It is worldwide increase every 3 seconds. Multiple courses, as I described, but most of those courses have long courses, 6, 10 years. And the last few years with increasing events. In the UK, there are 850,000 individuals, but the impact on society, on health and social care systems cannot be understated. A quarter of our hospital beds are suffering from cognitive decline and dementia. More than 3/4 of those in residential care have dementia. That's quite separate from the devastating impact on families. And so therefore, we need to improve the diagnosis, the care and support for people, and we need to find treatments. Numbers will increase dramatically unless we can find ways to prevent dementia. The reason they will increase is that most of the key causes of dementia, such as Alzheimer's disease, are very age-related. So age-related that the prevalence doubles, the chance, if you like, of getting dementia, doubles every 5 to 6 years over the age of 60. Going from about 4% in the early 70s to 40%. And more of us are living longer. And aging populations, very much as Suzanne, lead to increasing dementia prevalence. It is the global challenge of our age. You can see that the biggest growth in the next decade will be low and middle-income countries, particularly those in transition. Less effective prevention is found. Not living longer, and that is a fantastic thing to celebrate. The success of public health, of medicine, has been that we have made great strides in lots of the previous killers of the previous generations. You can see on the left there the tremendous improvements in life expectancy in the last 1,500 years in South Africa. And the dotted and red lines are the projections to the future, which of course, predictions for the future are always difficult, particularly in current climates. But the shape of a And this is the shape of the South African population. You see these big bunches of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And those people, as life expectancy will go on to be the people at high risk of dementia. This population growth means that in South Africa, there's been a growth in the number of people over 60 from 3.5 million to 5.4 million in under 20 years. And that's not just increasing the population as a whole, that's because people are living long, again, a success. And the highest prevalence of older people is in the East Cape. We don't really know the prevalence of dementia. Somewhere 180,000, 360,000, but it's hundreds of thousands. And it's particularly underestimated in populations where there is stigma and there is poor case finding or diagnosis. In the UK, we estimate that 1/3 of people never get a diagnosis. What it must be like in other societies where stigma has probably gone further to move, which I don't think we're ready to do. Well, just to make sure that we know what we're talking about, everybody has a bit of a sense of what dementia is. As I said, it's not just a bit of forgetfulness, but it's acquired cognitive impairment that involves multiple cognitive domains. What do I mean by that? It isn't something important, it's a decline, it's a change. That's the acquired thing. Multiple domains, it can't be just a problem with language, or just a problem with memory. It's involving all these different cognitive domains in our brain. And by definition, it must be severe enough to interfere with our activities of daily living. And that differs a lot. It usually starts very insidiously, so you can recognize it. And in its early stages, when it hasn't fulfilled its criteria, interfering with activities of daily living, the term mild cognitive impairment is often or eczema. It's usually progressive, but it's important to recognize that it's not always progressive. Maybe static, or there may be reversible treatment causes, and they mustn't be missed. So another thing that if you read the lay press, often get mixed up. Alzheimer's disease does not equal dementia. Dementia does not equal Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is what we call it's the most common cause. Dementia is a syndrome. Alzheimer's is one of the diseases that can cause dementia. And of course, as people get older, they may have more than one condition that contributes. Dementia has been recognized for centuries, referred to in King Lear, referred to in treatises back in the early Middle Ages. And our understanding of the causes has changed over the years, as has our ability to diagnose. And just to take you back, this is from 1845. I don't know whether you can see that line up there. This is causes of dementia. And I recognize some of them in my clinic. Fall upon the head, that might be brain trauma. I don't often diagnose suppression of hemorrhoids as a cause. I don't see many people who abuse mercury, but maybe I'm missing it. Syphilis is much less common than it was a couple of 100 years ago. Abuse of wine, this still happens, I'm afraid, to shock you here in the Cape. Disappointed affection, frights, political shocks, disappointed ambition. Anybody's been following the politics of the UK, I really like the fact that he had 14 unknown causes out of 235, which is a lot better than mine. But the real model here of understanding that these were diseases that were caused by abnormal proteins that were misfolded and accumulated within the brain dates back just over 100 years. Alzheimer's described here this patient, Augustine, back in 1906, somebody in her 50s started having problems with her memory, and he documented beautifully her cognitive decline, which was tragic. And then he examined her brain after death. Said that at post-mortem there was an evenly atrophic or shrunken brain. And he showed these beautiful pictures. And we saw the neuronal loss, that loss of synapses I was talking about, but he also drew these pictures out of big lumps of protein outside brain cells, which are now called plaques, or lumps really. And these tangles within neurons, within the brain cells. And his drawings, I think, stand just as well as any of our modern illustrations. And we now know, it took a while to understand this, that the heart of the plant is a protein that's referred to as amyloid or beta amyloid, and at the heart of the tangles, which are the railway tracks of the neuron that are all broken down and tangled up, is a protein called tau. So hang on to that. The key hallmarks are amyloid, plaques, and tau-containing tangles. Alzheimer's disease is one of the causes. Vascular dementia is a really important cause, particularly in young onset. And dementia is really one of the interest rates. Parkinson's, again, another abnormal protein. Frontotemporal dementia, many different proteins. And then we have a whole very large number of other causes, from HIV, head injury, alcohol, tumors, vitamin and hormone deficiencies as well. Now, our clinical diagnosis isn't perfect. Historically, it's only been 60 to 90% correct when tested against autopsy. And I say historically because there's been a revolution in the last couple of decades in terms of scans and biomarkers that can allow us to see. But Alzheimer's can only see after death down a microscope. I'll talk a little bit about that. This really is a massive change. So why is that important? Because timely, not too late, accurate diagnosis is important for our treatment. We have some treatments for Alzheimer's disease. They're not wonder drugs, they're not great, but I will take them if I had Alzheimer's. They provide some symptomatic benefit. And it's really sobering to think that these treatments were found and licensed 25 years ago. And we just sat with a few symptomatic treatments for 25 years. Think of the advances in other fields of new therapies. We are not making the progress we should do, and there are good reasons for that I'll come to. It's so important for families and individuals to plan access support, and actually if you have a timely diagnosis, an individual could be involved in decisions about their own future, which if left too late, they won't. And it's absolutely critical for research to find treatments that will actually slowly prevent disease. So what does prevention mean? At one level, it can be before the disease even starts. It could be before symptoms, or it could be before some level of severity. Loss of functional independence, for example. And it involves risk factor management and therapeutic interventions, and it can be at an individual level, any one of us, or at society. And we've had great successes, haven't we, in terms of prevention. Better than treatment, infectious diseases. And we see John Snow, who took the pump, a handle off the pump on Wolfson to stop cholera. We have Jenna doing smallpox vaccination, remarkable. And of course, we all lived to a bit of prevention, behavioral change, social distancing, masks, and then a remarkable achievement in such a short time of finding therapies, vaccinations, immunizations that will reduce the risk of disease and the risk of severe disease. One case study to give us hope here, where prevention combined with treatment. So this is deaths per million women in the UK. And along the bottom we have pretty much the last 20 years, 2001, 2015. The yellow dot is cardiovascular heart disease. And the red dot is basically stroke, cerebral vascular disease. And look what's happened to the number of the deaths per million women. It's a phenomenal success. But the blue dot I didn't point out, that's dementia. Now the leading cause of death in the UK, and has been for some years in women, and now in total women and men. And Sue, in her kind introduction, talked about how much there's a real killer across the whole world, not just in the more advanced economies with older populations. So we need to address risk factors, and we need to think of therapies. What are the risk factors? And I'm afraid there are some that we can't do much about. Age is the biggest risk factor. Women are more at risk than male. And if you have a family history of some sort, you're at slightly higher risk. That usually frightens people, so I want to talk a little bit more about it. Anybody here has had a relative with Alzheimer's disease? Now, does that mean that you're all going to get Alzheimer's disease? No. Because as we live older, we're more likely to have relatives who survive to 70 or 80, where their chance, if you've got 4 grandparents all living in the 80s, you should expect at least one, sadly, to have dementia. But there are genetic risks. There's a very rare family which has been a part of my research for more than 25 years now. I'll talk about that because it's a subject that's very dear to my heart. And there are also genetic risk modifiers. I'll explain what I mean by those differences. So my colleague, Wolfson said, if you really want to avoid dementia, choose your parents very carefully and then maybe a bit late. So a word of a slight diversion here, we think about the disproportionate impact on certain groups. The most disadvantaged in our society have a great impact because they don't carry support and resources. Women are twice as likely as men in the UK to have dementia, and they're twice as likely to provide care. So double whammy. They are wives, daughters-in-laws, and sisters who look after people with dementia. What about the genetics, the family history I was telling you about? Well, it depends upon your family history. So one great aunt in their 90s, and I do get people coming to see me, I'm really worried, great aunt Ellie, she's got Alzheimer's disease and she's 96. Should I worry? Answer no. But if you have got 7 members of your family who have onset in their 40s or 50s, that is more likely to have these rare genes. We now know there are 3, prisoner 1, prisoner 1, amyloid precursor protein, APP, and prisoner 2. And also, it's in their 30s, 40s, 50s, can be later, that's typical. And every family member, anybody who's a child or parent with one of these genes, is at 50% risk and 50% risk of getting the disease at that same early age, which is a devastating thought. Alcohol is a major genetic risk factor. We have these different alleles, E4, E3, E2. E3 is the most common, E4 increases your risk. If you have 1, you have 3-fold increased risk. If you have 2, almost 12-fold increased risk. And in South Africa, it's probably slightly higher proportion of ApoE4 than there is in some parts of the world. Typically, 17 to 25% is typical ApoE4, it's not 25%. In some communities, it's actually modifiable risk factors, yes. And if you feel like you need to go and address any one of these right now, I don't mind if you look at the lecture, that's absolutely understandable. Smoking, blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, these are things that we have known for years are for other reasons we should do something about, and dementia is now another one to add to that. What's good for your heart is good for your brain. Stop smoking, look after your weight, take some exercise, look after your cholesterol, look after your blood pressure. Excess alcohol, head injuries are also risk factors. And there are some that exert their risk from early or middle life. So we now know, which we did not know, and this is work of my colleague Jill Livingston, I'm a member of this commission that was also to look at dementia. And if we look at risk factors there are some risk factors that really matter. This sort of swirly thing shows the life course from birth, some risk factors coming in midlife, that orange there, blood pressure has an impact even as early as your 40s and 50s for your risk of dementia in your 70s and 80s. If you look as a whole, maybe a third, if we could address all these risk factors, we could achieve dementia. There are some that governments really need to do something about. We think that air pollution has an effect via the hearts and lungs of people to affect it and increase risk of vascular dementia. But there may be ways in which it involves inflammation and seeding, as Dr. Nightingale is looking at, not related to air pollution, but thinking about interaction between different factors, inflammation within the brain. And staying in education. This is something that societies need to take seriously because we know why, but long education reduces your risk. And there is hope because this is a remarkable paper from almost 10 years ago now, And I showed you the graph of that exponential graph. So I want you to first focus on the blue bars. This is 65 to 69, and you can see those blue bars, that's your prevalence of dementia by age group, going off exponentially, reaching nearly 40%, as I said, in the 90s. And the blue bars represent what the age-specific incidence, the prevalence was over 20 years ago, in the early 90s. And that study was redone carefully 20 years later. But I'm not very good on colours. Is that pinkish? Pinky colour there showed that, yes, it's still exponential, but particularly for those individuals in their 80s, the prevalence had reduced. Why was that? Well, if you think what happened going between the 50s, 60s, then into the 70s and 80s, we had treatments for blood pressure. Think about what happened to people's education between the 1930s, 1940s, 50s, and 60s. So risk factors at society level were being addressed, and this is bringing down your risk. Did the numbers overall reduce? No. Because even though your risk was reduced, there were more people in their 80s, 90s, 70s. What about treatments? Well, just like risk factors, you can prevent the pathology starting, so like measles immunization for the whole population. You can identify before any pathology is present, like is done in some cancers, which are known genetic risk factors. Or you can try and address it when pathology is already present, which is classic for many cancer screening. Identify cancer, early cancer, and then deal with it. So key requirements is to detect the pathology, have enough time to alter the trajectory, and have a way of actually intervening in an acceptable way. So delaying disease onset in late life is really effective in terms of reducing the risk. This is projections from the United States. A 5-year reduction, or 5-year delay in onset, takes that blue climbing line of prevalence of millions of people down to the dotted line. You can halve prevalence by delaying onset in a late life disease by only 5 years. And I say only that would be an amazing achievement, but it shows what we can do. And so we need, when do we need to treat? We don't really know. There would be an advantage in starting before any irreversible losses, which there's most to say, probably easiest to do so. And when we, probably as individuals, would want our disease slow, I don't want mine when I'm bedbound and mute in my early stages of dementia. But I will look at it, even if I've got the current memory and real-time tools that I have. And there have been many trials in Alzheimer's disease. They've been attributed to lots of different reasons. The brain is just too hard to target. Too difficult. We've had the wrong targets, wrong, what's an amyloid or tau, something else, we're missing the point. Or we can give doses at higher levels, and there is some evidence for that in neutrons or renin-2. So how can we detect the early changes? And it's worth thinking that when we see people with dementia, there's been a huge loss already. What you see here is a brain scan, looking like this, slice, face has been taken off. See the left ear there and the right ear on the other side, and the block spaces are fluid. And the area of the particularly critical, an area called the hippocampus, and I've circled it in red here. Do you see how much black there is around those little wispy structures? That individual's hippocampus is devastating. Now, have I picked somebody from a care home? No. This is somebody who's being entered into a clinical trial for Alzheimer's disease. How could you possibly find any benefit of memory when somebody's got such devastating? It's too late. And even when somebody comes to see me in clinic, their hippocampus is already down by 10 to 20%. And the rates of loss have already gathered momentum 4 times that of normal aging by that stage. So the insights into one of the earliest changes, we have to go earlier than somebody coming to clinic. Things have been going on for years, it's obvious. And some of those insights have become from those families I told you about. Those families with early onset inherited disease. And this is one such family tree. The bark shaded in diamonds are people who had Alzheimer's disease. age 40 or 50. You just see it devastating, generation after generation. And these are the generation at risk, individuals with a parent who was affected. That is how the first genes were found, because people gathered these families, and I want to pay tribute to this remarkable woman, Carol Jennings, who was my patient, who wrote to John Hardy, who found the first gene, and said, I think my family may be of interest to you, because it's not just chance that my dad and my uncle had the same thing. And she was absolutely right, and that was probably one of the biggest breakthroughs in the history of Alzheimer's disease. If you know the gene, you know the protein it makes, you can understand how it's devastating the brain. And the newspapers at the time, this is 1991, there's a very young Carol saying this may unlock the cure. Well, we've been a bit slow, haven't we? These researchers like me, we make them again. So this is somebody, one of those families who's at risk. I'm going to show you a series of scans, and you by now are very well equipped to know where the hippocampus is and the black spaces. This is something completely well, many years before onset in their family. And I'm going to show you annual scans. First scan, second scan, third scan. You may see it jump about a little bit because they've gone to the scan in a slightly different position, but it's exactly the same size. Next, next, next. And I wonder whether you notice some of those black spaces increase in size. You put them on a panel like this, and in color in red, you see the change. All of that change is happening in this individual without any symptoms. They're working for time. So there's a pre-symptomatic phase of loss, the gap. These red bars are people who carry the mutation, the blue are family members who don't. And you can see the decline in brain volume structures, the hippocampus shrinking. But this cell death must be a consequence of something happening upstream in terms of proteins and destructions within the mechanisms of neurons. Could we see what Alzheimer's saw in life? Well, he used stains and new Zeiss microscopes to draw those fantastic pictures. That was after death. But then, almost 20 years ago now, a way of you putting those same stains to stain tissue onto a radioactive tracer and being able to scan people, PET scan, you can see the amyloid lineup in people's brains pre-symptomatic. Look at it down with a microscope, see it after death, see it with a scan in life. These are expensive, they're not very widely available. And the next we realized is that there were many people, these are two of my patients, who had very mild memory problems. Progressed to Alzheimer's disease. The one on the right continued to send me Christmas cards for many years after he managed to take early retirement from the job that he hated and was giving him real stress and causing memory problems. So it's a sensitive marker, a predictive marker of cognitive decline, maybe 15, 20 years before. And then the next marker was being able to take samples of fluid from the back lumbar punctures and detect changes in the protein. This fluid has come from the brain, and you can see the changes both in amyloid and in tau. And the red dots are people who had high tau and low beta, that there. The red ones are the people who went on to Alzheimer's disease. You know, so really very sensitive and specific. And this is very recent work from our own group, from my PhD student, Angela O'Connor here, showing that in non-carriers, over here on the far left, you see a very low level of this blood biomarker. In blood, no longer CSF or expensive PET scan. These are people who are gene carriers but are pre-symptomatic, much higher levels, and people who are really affected even higher. So now we have something that is much less expensive, much more accessible. We could assess onset and track, see that bit of the iceberg that's under the surface. What we see with people who are symptomatic is a bit above the surface of the water. And schematically, we can see a range of changes. This cartoon, the detail doesn't really matter, but the red is amyloid developing, going from normal to abnormal over a number of years of one's life. The orange being the loss of the synapses, the balloon, the atrophy, those brain shrinkages, and then finally the memory decline, and then the functional losses. We have a 15 to 25-year period when there is amyloid, but there isn't symptoms. And primary prevention would have to happen, and secondary after that. And for all these pre-symptomatic treatments, there are huge challenges. We have to identify the pathology, we need to track it, and we need to find treatment. And you may have seen, well, if you read some papers, there's a cure every week, isn't it? But actually, I think there are a couple of things that really give hope now. And we get the first ever licensed treatment against amyloid for Alzheimer's disease in Europe. Very controversial. Accelerated approval by the FDA. That this only 6 weeks ago or so, from basically the same whole family of therapies, antibodies, using immunotherapy to attack amyloid in the brain and show this has been claimed. But it's been a long journey. This is a study that we were involved in, which looked really promising over 20 years ago. And this came from, apparently, was somebody, a student in Dale Shank's lab, who was voted as having the stupidest idea, but tried it anyway. Why don't we vaccinate the mice, the model for the disease, against amyloid? And it had dramatic removal of amyloid. And then we have had over 20 years, first active immunization, vaccination, which caused inflammation in the brain and was under control. So then we have to give antibodies. So on the way, but there are now at least 4 still in development. And just to give you this most recent update, in this 1,800 individuals, decline was slowed by 27%. And activities of daily living, functional independence, other endpoints were significant. Now, there's a lot to go between a press release, peer review, publication, and licensing, but it gives hope. So what will that mean? It will greatly increase the pressure on diagnosis. Being very realistic, most people think there's no point in making diagnosis, the stigma will have to change. Treatments initially will be very expensive and complex, hard to administer, and side effects will be inevitable for active therapies and cancers as well. Blood biomarkers are one great step towards that. More efficient, rapid imaging may also be another. This is work we're doing at the moment. On the left is a standard scan, on the right is a super accelerated with new image processing, cutting the time for a scan, a brain scan, by about 2/3 down to 1 Maybe there'll be a scanner coming to more near you sometime soon. Mobile scanners are now available. So we have the opportunity, we have the real therapies. Imagine if we had ways of identifying people at risk, we do. Biomarkers that enable diagnosis, we do. Treatments that were effective, relatively benign, affordable, easy to administer and monitor. So those are the big tools. Think of other diseases that are really progress. And like just almost my final slide, just draw, because I've been interested in these families. Many people, probably some people in the audience here, take statins, and it may do, in fact, worldwide reducing cholesterol levels and therefore cardiovascular disease. And those statins were found by families that had a rare gene that gave them high cholesterol, hypercholesterol. That's how we found. The trials were going to be stopped when it was used in other. When people who have been put on these statins with these genes in these families were looked at in terms of their incidence of heart attacks and other cardiovascular events compared to their parents who hadn't had that benefit. By the age of 40, 1% treated the next generation that had a heart attack or some other event, as opposed to 26% of their parents. And so we can do that for dementia, for these families. So I think, just to conclude, prevention is possible. It's possible now. We should do as much as we should be doing. We should be stopping from looking after our blood pressure, dealing with other societies. There is a real opportunity, and there are great challenges. Great challenges to deliver those therapies as well as to find more therapies earlier. But an answer to prevention is worth a kind of hearing. We are in the era of prevention and prevention. thanks again to the Wolfson Foundation, patients and families, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jim. That was really very inspiring and so much to learn. And Rachel's one of these things is really, I've always found facts and getting a good one. And so thank you for your insights there. I want to check if there's anybody in the audience who wants to raise anything before our day connect. Are there any pressing questions that they'd like to have? I think we should just have a minute or two of that.
Thank you for an extremely interesting lecture. I have dementia in my Alzheimer's, dementia in my family. I received wisdom has always been that his connection either with hitting the ball at soccer or it's been with working with lead. My father worked with lead in an iron family. Would you like to comment on that?
Well, I can't comment on your family, but I can say that lead poisoning is a cause of dementia, as is repeated head injury. And we know that particularly in professional American footballers, that's really become a major thing. So, right, hope you're staying clear of the lead.
Let's get to the front over here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Very interesting. I've got a question. Has any research around use of psychedelics in terms of a form of therapy come to the fore?
The short answer to that is no. I mean, there have been lots of efforts really as behavioral management, not in terms of prevention, attacking the underlying disease.
And then is there also work when looking at prevention through diet, exercise, and academics? Where there was one recent studies, one would be exercise in the brain.
I'll split those into two. The first about diet and exercise, yes, there have been studies, and in particular one big study, if you want to look it up, is called the finger study. It's actually quite hard to show this because of this long period of disease. But there is some evidence that certain lifestyle changes are actually showing, which is prevalent to some risk. And your second point was
Academics.
yeah, I'm just going to show you the example that I already forgot. So there's a great belief that, and there is really good evidence for it, that using all of stay active. So the question is, are people with higher education more or less at risk of getting dementia? Who thinks more? Who thinks less? It's more, because you are really good at treating your heart disease. And you're less likely to get stabbed. And you're less likely to have a car accident. So I'm afraid you're going to live longer. So all the more reason to do all the other things for risk to protect yourself. But definitely staying cognitively as well as physically is a good thing.
Thank you for very interesting lecture. My wife died recently, and she had years risk deterioration. We'd be very unable to define precisely the reasons why, but she did have a couple of bad falls on her head. We hadn't really thought, because she did concussion, that there could be any relationship.
Well, first of all, I'm very, very sorry to hear about your wife. Because nervous diseases have impact on much more than the individual. So, almost certainly not. So, head injury is common, and whenever you look at something with Alzheimer's disease, people can always identify something. And the reality is that these are marginal effects, and they're really for the sort of it's really chronic trauma that really matters. The repeated impacts that people in professional American football have. The vast majority of us, it is actually, this is an age-related Alzheimer's genetic later. And so these things, people often look for a cause and an explanation, and usually it isn't relevant. So I can reassure that you're responsible for almost certainly not true.
I think this is our last question, and then we'll wrap up and there's plenty of time to talk outside.
Doctor, I'd like to know if people with bipolar disorder, particularly when there are numerous periods of mania, if those people are at risk.
So that's a really good question, and I think that more research needs to be done. There is an association with depression, but what gets very difficult is because in many of these conditions we have other confounding, treatments, other things going on, other behaviours that make people at risk. So it's actually really difficult to disentangle.
So let's end there. So thank you very much, Nick, for your taking time to come and spend time with us in detail to deliver this. Very much appreciated. I'd like to quickly also thank DME and our ICDS department for organizing the lecture, and particularly to thank the Wolfson Foundation for their ongoing support of what recently does and for